Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mary Cunningham and I'm the Chairman. Members, please can I remind you that this meeting is being webcast. A little bit of housekeeping. Could I please ask you to switch mobile phones to silent? Members, there's no fire alarm test this evening. Should the fire alarm sound, members, we need to vacate the chamber via the fire exit to the rear and assemble in the car park. As we move through the meeting, please can I remind everyone present to turn off their microphones when they've finished speaking. Before we begin with the meeting, I'd like to highlight that we have a new member of the committee, Councillor James Abbott. Welcome, Councillor Abbott, and we look forward to working with you throughout the year. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I am aware that we've had apologies from Councillor Mrs Walters, Councillor Ball.
Councillor Ball as well, Chairman.
And I think that's it. Everyone else is here. So I will now proceed to item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Councillor Mrs Sandham.
Yeah, I guess I should say I'm a member of the litter picking group that Krista Marie Dobson is going to be talking about.
Okay, thank you. Mrs Sandham. Any others? No? Okay, thank you. If there are no more declarations, I'll proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee held on the 13th of July 2022. Can I seek a proposer?
Oh, please.
Thank you, Councillor Courtauld. I now seek a seconder. Councillor Mrs Sandham, thank you very much. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Not in favour? Those against?
And members, just to say, you can vote even if you weren't present at the last meeting.
Okay.
And I wasn't here.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Or shall I just do the back and do them later? Yeah. Right, so now I'll move to agenda item 4, public question time. Members, I can confirm there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we now proceed with agenda item 5. Agenda item 5, scrutiny review into litter management in the Braintree district. This is our second evidence gathering session. Members, we have Councillor Krista Dobsey of Fearing Parish Council in attendance this evening, who has very kindly agreed to talk about her experience with the Fearing Volunteer Litter Group. And I know we'll gain some valuable information from Councillor Dobson for our scrutiny review into litter management. So I can welcome Councillor Dobson and ask you to introduce yourself and provide your presentation. And I understand you're willing to take a few questions at the end.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, welcome everybody to my little presentation, prepared yesterday at the 11th hour. I hope this gives you what I am a councillor at Fearing Parish Council. I'm also part of the environmental working group there. And I just want to give you an overall really of how the litter picking group came to be, why it came to be, and how it's worked with the street cleaning team at BDC and how it's now working going forward. And I'd never want to say the failures, but some of the successes and some of the things we need to work on. And hopefully that will give you an overall for your thoughts going forward. So, Jessica, if you don't mind turning across, thank you. Now, apologies, it's probably not the best template to use on here, but just to go through, so how the group came to be. basically, prior, I think it was just before, or we'd gone into lockdown and they were talking about closing things down. Me and my husband went for a walk and they'd obviously said that everything would close down, including fast food places, which I have to admit is a bit of my delight because we often get KFC wrappers, McDonald's wrappers, the usual Costa coffee cups left on the side of the road. So I was quite happy with this. Turned out of my road and turned onto what is Rye Mill Lane, and strewn across the whole of the road was a load of empty KFC wrappers and chicken leftovers, just literally strewn across the road, plastic, everything. So I turned back, went back to the house, got equipment to pick it up and put it away. It was right next to the bin that was next to the playing field. So there was really no reason, apart from the fact that who'd ever eaten it had made the most of their last KFC for however long and literally thrown it out the car window. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a, I'm sure we're aware, it's a reoccurring issue around our district. I did take pictures and I did post it online, and I got quite a lot of feedback saying that basically, you know, the amount of litter that's thrown around the village is appalling, and, you know, fast food is often one of the most talked about. And I just kind of thought, well, I need to do something, but we were literally going into lockdown. Jessica, if you don't mind turning off, thank you. So I decided on the back of my input, I would have got the picture, by the way, because I did take a picture and put it on Facebook, but I can't find it. And I haven't got the time to scroll through all of my Facebook posts. But what I decided to do is that we had an environmental working group anyway, and next time we met via Zoom, I'd have a chat with them and say, well, what can we do? So we basically, from the discussion with the environmental working group, we decided to put together with the parish council an announcement on social media to advertise that we'd have a litter picking campaign as part of the Keep Britain Tidy. They were doing one in the autumn. So we put a date together and a time where to meet, and, you know, basically whoever wanted to come along could come along. We got some equipment from the street cleaning team, thanks to BDC, but I kind of underestimated. I kind of allowed for some of the guys from the environmental working group, but we had over 25 people turn up on that day, and they ranged all ages, and people really enjoyed it, getting to know one another, talking about the issues of litter. It's a very emotive subject, or it seems to be a very emotive subject. And if you don't mind turning over, you can see some of the nice people that were volunteering on that day. As I said, young and old, all age groups. Got a few of the environmental working group volunteers there, but there was a lot of people that were literally residents. And interestingly, quite a lot of these people actually went round on their own accord anyway and picked up the rubbish that was around the village. So luckily I managed to get out the photos on that one. So from that we then we did the press release. So we used, again, social media, and the parish council did one. I prepared the post, it went out. We also put it on. We've got a eco-fearing and cones Facebook group which we use, and we put that on there as well. And I also did a bit of a press release to go in the local parish magazine, and basically said, you know, how well we did. We were really impressed with the turnout. Thank you, everybody. And that we highlighted the Green Heart scheme, and that, you know, you can volunteer via the scheme and get your own equipment and set yourself up. But if anyone was interested, to basically contact myself or the parish clerk. One thing I'm learning about being involved in as a councillor is that people are happy to help, but they kind of need that leadership for someone to take the reins and actually push something forward. And sorry, Jessica, if you don't mind, thank you. So the press releases went out. Over 25 people emailed, contacted and said yes, we'd be interested. And one of the things we did when I put the information in the local magazine is I actually said these are the areas we need covered, and ideally we'll try and marry you up. So to make it as easy as possible, we would marry those people up with the places that were closest to them. So far we've done well. We've got 25 people. I'm now frantically trying to rush around and speak to the BDC street cleaning team to get some more equipment and high-vis jackets and various things and get all these things delivered. But obviously there are difficulties because we're doing this in the middle of COVID. So sanitisation of equipment before it's handed over was an issue. All sorts of things that we had to follow the COVID protocol kind of, and it also stopped us from kind of meeting up again because we went back into lockdown in around November from memory. We couldn't then have another get together or everyone get to know each other. So COVID didn't help to start with to really lift it off the ground. I say difficult isn't, but again, you need someone to lead, but there's always a time issue with these things. We're all, the same people volunteer in the same villages. It's always the same faces you see that put themselves forward. So time is always limited for those that are organising, i.e. me. So trying to get all that equipment out, given the COVID parameters we had to work in, was difficult. So it did take probably 2-3 months to get all the equipment out, and obviously we didn't have the equipment, so the street cleaning team didn't have the equipment to give us because I think there'd been a bit of a run on it from what I could work out. So it took us 3 months to kind of get everyone equipped and ready to go. And the one thing I found is I asked people to sign up to the Green Heart scheme, and some of them were kind of reluctant to do that to start with, and I'll come on to that again later. But the other thing we had was obviously GDPR is an issue, so I've collated a spreadsheet, and I might move on from this. Yeah, so if you don't mind switching, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself here, Jessica. So basically, I have a spreadsheet, and it's got all the roads and areas listed on it, and I've got a name for each volunteer that covers those areas. Now, it doesn't mean to say that when we were chatting, nobody's limited to those roads or that area, but it just means we have a hold of who's doing what. And also they've got a contact number for me so that, if for any reason someone's not well or they need to stand down, then we've got a run of people that can replace them or can take their patch. But again, GDPR plays a part in that, so you have to get permissions and things like that, do everything properly, basically. And it's just to reiterate here as well that my next point is that the volunteers complement the parish handyman. So the parish handyman still goes out, he's still paid by the parish council to collect litter. But in Fearing, we have quite a few rural roads that do not have any pavements, and it's not fair or safe for volunteers to cover those areas. So he covers those areas, and it works quite well in the sense that he's out, they're out. We've got a little WhatsApp group now where people share information, fly tipping, this has been found. The handyman and myself can feed that back to the parish council clerk, who can then make the necessary phone calls. And basically now what I've done is, given that COVID's guidelines have lapsed, we've now got all the equipment and everything that is needed is now kept at the parish council office, so that if anyone needs anything, they're not having to come to me or wait for me. They can go to the office and get it from Lisa, our clerk. She can also then keep an eye on when things are running low and things can be reordered. We have a budget that's allocated under the environmental working group for the litter picking group. we go. Gosh, brilliant. So it's handy to have a budget. Just before I go on to this slide, just because there may be things that crop up, we may want to do a joint. At the moment, the volunteers actually they go out when they want to go, so we don't have a day where we all go out. It's very much flexible because we've got people that work shifts, work various hours, and they can fit it in around their available time. And we don't say, you've got to do it every week. It's as and when you can, but if you can do it on a regular basis, that'd be brilliant. And as I said, if there's any issues, we've got a WhatsApp group now that someone will say, look, I'm struggling, or, can someone cover this pack for me? And that's what happens. The successes of the group, it allows community members to get together and get to know each other. There's lots of people that don't know each other still in the community, but if you walk around with your high vis on and you see people picking litter and you're a litter picker, you'll have a chat. We do on WhatsApp as well. We have met up, which I'll come on to that in a minute. And again, it also is nice because you get some very positive feedback from those that aren't volunteers, but people that are walking around the village going, it's nice to see you're doing it. So again, it's a feel-good factor as well for the people that are volunteering and the community in general. There's been some cross-working with Coggeshall. We've got Coggeshall Road between ourselves and obviously Coggeshall, and it is a more rural road. There aren't any paths, so it is something that that our handyman covers. But we have got a husband and a wife who do actually cover that themselves, and they've made contact with the guy that covers Coggeshall End. So they sort of meet up in the middle, and so there is some cross collaboration with Coggeshall. There's also actually some cross collaboration with Kelvedon, because Kelvedon have got a litter picking group as well. And One Stop, although it is in Kelvedon, is always a big bone of contention because it's where a lot of rubbish tends to gather for whatever reason. And again, Kelvedon used to, before the Fearing litter picking group was around, they used to come up Fearing Hill and cover Fearing Hill. And the lady that covers Fearing Hill from the Fearing group, if she can't do it, actually she goes back to the lady that used to cover it on the Kelvedon. So there is cross collaboration between the villages, which is again quite nice. What the volunteers also do is, as I said, they're our eyes and ears. So if fly tipping appears, if there's a particular problem, if they see antisocial behaviour with regards to litter, then they tend to report it, and then we can then deal with it as a parish council. We can put something on social media so that we can make people aware that we're aware that this is going on, and we're aware that there's fly tipping here and it is being dealt with. So it feels quite, rather than reactive, we're being quite proactive on social media. As I said, we're using the WhatsApp group that works quite well. Again, GDPR, we have to get approval for everyone to be happy to do that, but it seems to quite work well. There are people that aren't on it, and we do use email from time to time. I've been very honest with those people that don't want to use the WhatsApp group, and I have said, look, again, going back to that time thing, my time is limited, so if you're not going to use WhatsApp, you're going to find that email me by all means, but I can't literally, I can't copy and paste what's on WhatsApp and send it via email. I haven't got the time, and everyone appreciates that. So it's just that communication to make everyone aware how we're working and why we're working like that. And yeah, just to say, on talking about having a budget, so what we do is annually, from a parish council point of view, obviously we've got the parish council sets aside a budget for the environmental working group, and we meet up with the litter pickers once a year, and what we do is we have an informal meeting, and we have like a lunch basically, and that comes out of effectively the precept, which we've had one person which is actually within the litter picking group that's complained about that, and I've said, well, we as a parish need to say thank you for what the volunteers are doing in our eyes, and I've talked to other people that aren't involved in the volunteer litter picking group, and residents have been like, well, why not? Well, they're clearing up our rubbish. I think we give them, what was it, £10 a head last time? It's really not a lot for a lunch, but it's just a thank you. And actually what it does is, again, it brings everyone together as a community. They can talk about all the issues, they can get to know each other, and it's just been a really positive thing. And also it keeps that momentum of the group going, because as individuals litter pick when they want to, it would be very easy for them to kind of go, oh, well, I'm not going to do it for 6 months. Whereas because they feel they've got something back out of it, and even if it's just a lunch once a year, they enjoy that and they keep going with it. So I think value for money, I think it's really good. And the next slide just talks about Braintree's involvement. So we had the yellow temporary no littering sign on Inworth Road. Just to say, that works really, really well. We have a real problem on Inworth Road. And for those that don't know Kelvedon, Fearing, Inworth Road is where you come. It's the road between Fearing by the Blue Anchor, and it takes you into Tiptree. Now, it's a really busy junction. We call it Gorpit. It's a really busy junction. There's often a lot of stationary traffic. It's a really bad area for littering. And there's a general theme, I think, that runs through, is when you've got idling traffic, you tend to get a lot of litter. No exception to this. But that yellow temporary sign really did work. And actually, really interestingly, as soon as it went, within, I think, about a week, I had a message from one of the litter pickers that covers that road and went, it's all back. We've got what we call the phantom fishermen. Basically, we get fish leftovers wrapped up in a plastic bag and thrown out the window. And you have 3 or 4 of them along that road probably every week. So, don't know who they are, but they think it's acceptable to do that. And poor old Kim goes around and collects it every week pretty much. But it just shows that those signs that you're putting out, they do work. It does make people think. We haven't actually used any of the Don't Be a Tosser sign campaigns. It's something that actually I think we should look at, especially now we know the pinch points between the litter picking group and the handymen. So I think it's something we'll approach and perhaps try and draw back on from that. It's certainly been a good campaign in Coggeshall. So I think we should try it in the areas that we know are particularly bad. I think we've said it would be really good if Braintree could do something where we have a report littering campaign. I know you can get fined for littering. I've never understood this. It's the easiest win ever in terms of catching someone throwing something out their car and actually fining them for it. But I don't think it's to the fore enough in people's minds. Actually, it is an offence, and you should get fined for it, as far as I'm concerned. And I think there should be more fines. And I think if there have been fines so far, I think Braintree should talk about that. You know, we have fined people. We've had this many reports. We've fined this many people, and you know, and just to make it clear, I know we have the Contact magazine. I've just had that come through. But that would be a useful tool to make people aware that actually, yeah, you can get fined for this stuff. I mean, my personal thing, I don't know those that have been there, I've been over to Canada, and you drive along the Trans-Canadian Highway, and you get fined 10,000 Canadian dollars for littering. So I think we charge something like £150 as a fee for. It's not a lot really. But there you go. Easy win to pay back for having to clear up somebody else's rubbish, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, just going quickly back to, so for feedback on Braintree, so the Green Heart Scheme Declaration, I had a few people kind of come back to me and said, well, I'm not prepared to sign it because I don't want to sign my life away. Interesting though, they were people that were already picking up litter before I explained that there was the Green Heart Scheme. So if you're already picking it up, you're already kind of working next to the road, so you're already kind of putting yourself at risk already. But it's something to be aware of, that we had quite a few people say they wouldn't sign up to the actual individual Green Heart Scheme because they felt like they were signing their life away. So whether that can be looked at by Braintree, I don't know, but it's just worth feeding that information back. Yeah. So yeah, back to my fines and convictions. As I said there about the, Trans-Canadian Highway, they charge 10,000 Canadian dollars. Locally on the local roads and towns, it's 1,000 Canadian dollars. Personal opinion from our group is I don't think the fines are heavy enough in this country for people that litter. I think it should be far, far higher. It's just something we've talked about as a group for so many years, and it's explained at an educational level. When you're younger, at school, you shouldn't litter. That's a given. And then something seems to happen after leaving primary school, and some of, I don't know, it seems to get lost in some areas, and I don't know why. But I just think that, again, if we can put that information in the Contact magazine, and how many fines there have been, and you can get fined, maybe it will just help people think. And maybe some social media stuff from Braintree would be really helpful around that as well. It is an offence, and I don't think people see it. Fly tipping. Again, that's something I was talking to the group about before I came here. It is a real issue on our rural roads. I don't know how you deal with it, apart from we've said about using the cameras. But the one thing I think is important is that, again, feedback for Braintree is that maybe having some kind of information posters that can go on the parish council notice boards about, if you're going to get someone to take away your waste, make sure they're registered. I think a lot of people, they get things taken away, but they'll go for a cheap option, not realising that potentially that's just going to end up on someone's farmer's land. So if Braintree can use the parish council, the local parish council or town parish council notice boards to advertise the fact that, look, if you're going to get people to take things away, make sure they're registered, and this is how you do it. And perhaps again put that in the Contact magazine, because it's a massive frustration. I mean, I can whinge to you all about how annoying it is that, I mean, even for me, I have a certain vehicle and I can't take my personal vehicle into Braintree's refuse. Not Braintree's, Witton's refuse centre. So, it is becoming more difficult for people to take their waste away, but we just need to make it really clear, if you're going to have your waste taken away, you need to do it with registered people, and that they should have a licence, and they should see the licence before it's taken away. It's just information. And cameras, I know we've had cameras, and they have worked. Unfortunately, I think in our area some savvy person clocked that there was a camera and it got abused. But I do think they're useful. I certainly think there's quite a few areas in our rural roads, and we're talking about in West Road, where you could put a camera catch people again, find people and advertise the fact that these convictions have happened and these are the fines they're going through. It's, you know, it's probably a really easy way of printing money, to be honest. And carrying on from that, the other thing that we were discussing, cigarette butts don't seem to be viewed as rubbish. I don't know again how we can deal with this. We've got the train station at Kelvin, and we've got Threshold for Fearing, which is a business centre, and literally all along there, and it's got worse again as things have opened up after COVID, but you've got cigarette packets and you've got constant cigarette butts that the team are picking up. My mum smokes, and I've always known her to stub it out, put it in a handbag, put it in the bin when she gets home. Again, I think it's just perhaps BDC and working with local communities, we can do something to raise awareness that a cigarette butt is rubbish, because there's a lot of it. And you can say it's not a huge deal, but again, it's just getting that mindset that it is litter. It shouldn't be there. Take it home, put it in the bin. And young people. Okay, so this is something that we've picked up on, and I know it's something that Braintree are working they're working hard towards getting this under control. But young people have kind of said to us locally in the village that they haven't got enough places that they can recycle stuff. So your green bins that have been going around are brilliant. One, they're pretty obvious, you can't really miss them. But I think they'd be really useful to perhaps kind of roll out to some of the parish council, even if there's sort of a cost implication for that, but maybe we can roll them out on a more, not just on the main roads, but actually within the communities themselves. There's always litter around, to be honest, where shops are, where the children picked up to go to school, and it's not because they're intentionally littering, actually, it's because they're limited on, you know, our handyman comes around, he collects the bins once a week, but the bins that they've got that are next to where the kids are picked up from by the bus, then it's not big enough, or they haven't got anywhere they can put their recycling. So I think it's worth working with parish councils, town councils, to look at those pinch points that where those great neon green bins can be used in other areas, even at a cost, possibly that's passed down. And again, on the playing fields and the recreation facilities, that's a really good idea as well. Right, my last one. Thank you for putting up with me, but this one, it is in a different colour, but I'm going to be brutal. It's something that we always talk about as a group. The A12 and the A120 verges. I mean, this isn't just the A12 and the A120 verges. This is across our network, that the verges on our main trunk roads are awful. It's something that comes up every time we as litter picking groups meet up or we pass each other on the street. You know, have you seen how bad the A12 is at the moment? You know, have you seen this on, you know? And I just want to tell you all the story, because I think it's worth filtering it for those that are here. If you can filter this out to any colleagues or anyone you know, whether it's Essex County or whether it's Colchester Borough or anyone else that you speak to, is that I have a friend who I've known for years, and she found out she had a brother who came over to meet her about 10 years ago from Canada. And the first thing he said to Kathy when he walked in her door, and he'd travelled along the A120, along the A12 to Fingering-Hoe, and one of the first things he said is, God, your country's dirty. It looks so unkept. It's disgusting. And she said, I was floored because it was almost one of the first things he said. But actually, she said, I couldn't argue with him. And I said, well, no, you can't. Because actually, if you drive along some of our main arterial roads, it's gross. And I completely understand that it's not the authorities' fault. It's not National Highways, it's not, But leaving that litter there basically makes it look like it's acceptable and it's okay to litter. And I think that's something that every authority has got to think about, is that the impression that we leave on people visiting, because, as the discussions unfolded between Kathy and his brother, it's like, I've come to the UK and it is a hovel. Now, it is, I've been to Canada myself. Canada's a very clean country. I've been to Singapore. Singapore has, these lovely flower arrangements in the middle of their central reservations. We have litter. And it's gross and it makes us look bad as a country. If you can put me in front of anyone from National Highways, Essex Highways, anybody, please let me know. I will happily hound them. But it's just a massive, massive problem. And in fairness to Braintree, I think those green bins along the A12 and things, they've really helped. I think they've really made a difference. Just probably need to kick your cultures to Borough Council colleagues. But I think as groups, we'd like to work with those people. As I said, with Essex Highways, National Highways, other councils. It just doesn't leave a good impression, and it just makes it acceptable for other people to litter. And the other thing I was going to say there is, the A12, particularly between us and Markstay, is bad. But what's happened recently there is they've gone along and they've strimmed. And I don't know who's responsible. I don't know if there's contracts that go from Essex Highways or from National Highways to Essex Highways and BDC. I don't know. But they've strimmed, and all they've done then is they've strimmed the rubbish rather than collecting the rubbish up and taking it away. And that goes across the board. If we're going to strim a certain times of year, then let's clear up the rubbish before we do it, because we just make the situation a lot worse. That's all I have to say for now. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you very much. Firstly, for providing us with the PowerPoint presentation. That's really helpful. And for your own input as well. We really appreciate that. So if I can open it up to members for questions. I've got a couple or so, but I'll let others go first. Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you. That was great and well done. I was just thinking, we as district councillors have grants that we can give out to the parishes that we are involved with. And talking about your budget and everything you need and your equipment and stuff, I mean, we all hate litter. I have a huge issue around me of people picking up dog messes, putting them in a bag and then flinging them in the tree, which seems bizarre. But is there some sort of equipment, I'm not necessarily related to dog messes, but something we could do to help with our grants? I mean, maybe we could buy extra bins or something.
What we've had back is, so when we got the equipment from the litter picking team, we had obviously the litter pickers, the grabbers, we had the bags, we had the Green Heart Scheme booklet, and we had some high-vis vests and some gloves. The one thing that would be really useful, I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, is the hoops. So when you're walking around, you have the bag kind of clips onto this hoop, so it keeps the bag open. Silly thing, but it's actually really handy for when you're walking along and you can literally, if there's just one of you, if you've got two of you, great, but if there's just one of you, it's just really easy. And actually I saw a lady in Tiptree that was walking along, she'd obviously taken her children to school in Tiptree, and she had a pram, and she actually had one of them hoops, and she was literally, you could see it was a lot easier for her. She just literally had the hoop on the side of the pram, picking up as she went. So the street team don't provide that, but if you could provide that as
well, I will definitely look into it for the parishes around me. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott.
There's quite a lot of other things I'd like to say, but I'll keep it just the questions for our guests now, because we have a very similar but distinctly different in some ways system in Rivenhall, which doesn't get a lot of publicity, but I think this is the right forum where it should, because we don't all want to keep reinventing the wheel. But it's great to hear all the things you were doing. First comment, then question. Our experience is very similar. KFC, McDonald's, Costa, all the time. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I do not think this authority should be doing publicity stunts with these companies, which is what we tend to do, give them lots of free publicity. Their customers are persistently littering our environment. We need to work with them, I agree with that, but not in a way which just keeps giving them free publicity. If their customers are going to keep doing what they're doing, which they've been doing for decades, and it never stops, we've got to think about working in different ways with them. Two questions. Does your system involve BDC collecting all the collected waste in the purple sacks, or do you have other ways of getting rid of it? And secondly, do you do any recycling within your own collections, or again, does BDC collect it all?
No, that's fair enough. So what happens is we've got the purple bags. The litter picking team collect them up. They leave them near, if they can, they will leave them as near to the public bins as possible. And then what happens is our handyman goes round, collects them all up on a Monday, and then leaves them by the central point, which is next to our community centre. And then they get collected on the Wednesday by Braintree District Council's refuge then. There are a few of them. We have someone that leaves quite a lot of wine bottles around, and in fairness to the people that go out collecting in those particular areas, actually, they do go home and they take them home and actually recycle them. I don't necessarily encourage it, if I'm honest, Councillor, but just because it's time for them, and also not just COVID, but just going back to sanitation, should they do that? Is that their remit? But if there are some that will do it off their own backs, but I don't necessarily, as the organiser, I don't promote it. I want to make it as easy for them as possible. If they choose to do that, that's fine. Obviously, bigger items, so if they see fly tipping, they report it, and then if it's, say, an old tyre or something like that, then the handyman will then make arrangements to get that collected and take that back to the central point. To your point, just quickly though, about the Costa and KFC and McDonald's, I think it's trying to. I think it's basically the people that are using them that you need to target. And as I say, it sounds really awful, but there's something between going to primary school and learning that you shouldn't litter, and then coming into your sort of adolescence and getting a car, and then that completely changing.
I could just follow up on 2 points. So
yes,
question back through this process then is, because in Rivenhall I know lots of other places, either individually or collectively, the purple sacks are gathered up, left near litter bins. My understanding was that BDC did try to recycle that through its waste collection system. So the question is that still the case, or does it go to landfill, does it go to materials recovery at Great Blakenham? That'd be useful to know. On the fast food issue, I totally agree with you. A lot of this comes from cars, being thrown out of cars. I think my issue is that it's inherent in their business model of these companies, particularly the drive-through at Galley's Corner, Cholesterol Corner as we know and love it, that they drive in there, buy the stuff, and then at a certain distance, and Fearing's a good distance, Rivenhall's another good distance, and places points north of Braintree, up towards Gosfield and places like that, they get the same thing, out the window it goes. Now, I think that their business model of, I call it junk food, I don't touch it, to me it's horrible stuff. Their business model, I'm not saying encourages it, but certainly facilitates. And I've actually talked to these companies and said, why don't you and your immense amount of advertising you do, I mean, on radio sometimes when the McDonald's campaign is underway, you hear more McDonald's than you do anything else. It's just like, buy our stuff, we've got this. Why don't you have messaging within there on the advertising, not to litter? Please, but they never do. So I think they do have a big responsibility. I think it's a combination of their customers doing it. I totally agree with you about the age group. I've given talks to many schools, and mostly the youngsters, primary school age, are very good. They know not to litter. It's when they get into their teens. But I think unless we get fundamental with that issue, we're not going to crack it. And just having publicity campaigns for McDonald's, I don't think it's going to solve anything. It's just my own view. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor McArdle.
Thank you, Chair. Very inspirational talk. You've got quite an integrated system there of collecting litter. So I almost feel if I drive through your area that there'd be very little to see from what you're saying. So, yeah, well done for that. There's three questions I had. One was what started it all off in enabling you to collect all of this litter with the systems that you've got in place. Two, I'm interested about the Green Champion experience because I've had similar experiences and talked to people in my ward about this, and it's not something that's always encouraged people, although it should do. And thirdly, was there any organisation that particularly helped? Because you mentioned the Tidy Up Litter campaign. Obviously, there's Braintree Council, Essex County Council. So which organisation was most helpful? And if I could just make a remark about the KFCs and McDonald's of this world, because they're there in Canada as well. They don't have the same problem. So is this something that is habit that we have in this country? Interesting point, but yeah, so they're my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the fact that they're in Canada as well. There's a very different mindset out there in terms of littering and nature, actually. I think that's the thing, is that when you go to Canada, it's all about, well, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for nature, it's bad for wildlife, you just shouldn't do it. I think, and this is my personal view, I think this country is a little bit more detracted from the natural environment. Although we talk about it a lot and we say we're doing things, I think it's a very different experience on the ground. In terms of how I sort of facilitated, it was the help of Braintree District Council. So obviously off the back of I know there's always been a Keep Britain Tidy campaign, and they often do a spring clean. In 2020, that was moved back to autumn because obviously of COVID. So we tried to work that in with that, and then I made contact, myself and the parish clerk made contact with Braintree to see if we could get some help. Councillor Sandham helped us with this to try and get some equipment to allow that day to happen. And it was basically literally to get the group started. It's basically just us asking for volunteers and telling them what to do, and for me to be the contact. I think in all of this, what I found in everything I do in fearing is, as a councillor, is that people are happy as long as they know the task, they know what that's wanted from them. They're not necessarily going to lead, they need someone to lead. I've often said, within the group, if someone can take over, because obviously being a parish councillor, your personal time's already limited anyway, and I do other things as well. So, but nobody ever wants to take that, if you like, that lead or run it. So you have to have somebody that's prepared to do that, and it's just organically happened. As I said, for as a group, it doesn't work if we all say, right, we're going to go out every Tuesday. It's got to be workable for the people that want to volunteer. Some people go out in pairs. Some people go out when they take the dog for a walk. It's how it suits them. Does that answer all your questions? Is that okay?
Councillor Mrs. Pell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to congratulate you on what you're doing, and I know how hard it is to achieve that. I'm from Halstead, and Halstead had a similar problem a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago now, where we had litter. Then a group was formed called Halstead in Bloom. Now, those ladies and gentlemen are about frequently, in fact, most days within the town, deadheading, watering, all sorts of things with their fluorescent jacket on, and they pick up anything that they see as well. But they're doing that in partnership with BDC. They have a good working relationship with them. In fact, there is a partnership arrangement with them. And it has grown that actually in the town centre now, you don't see litter like you just see an odd bit now and again, but not like you did. But they also have regular litter picks. They have a young ones litter picks as well. And also I met Rotary Club the other day who were also doing a litter pick. So there are groups and organisations that go along and helping. And because people know that they're there, and they're there frequently, that you're seeing a much cleaner town, but you do see it a bit on the outskirts, a bit, because that's not what they're patrolling. But it does work the more you are seen about.
Yeah, if I come back to you on that point, we have, I mean, what I haven't said is the school have done their own sort of little mini litter picks around the playing field and things like that. So, but again, I think the younger generation, that age group do get it. What we're tending to find now is it's literally the people that are driving through. So it is like I was saying about Inworth Road, they're coming from somewhere else and they're waiting to turn. So, yeah, you're right. It's more the people that are coming through that and a certain group that are still doing it, unfortunately. As I said, it's an education, and we're doing well considering, and I think it has helped working with BDC on it. It also helps that we've got a handyman that wants to incorporate himself because he's part of the village as well, so he works with them as well, which is really handy.
And Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The difference with yourselves and our three councillors here is our three wards are unparished, therefore we don't have a parish council. So we have to do it ourselves. And it's the proactive side of things, which I liked what you came up with. And as an example, in my ward, we actually got the fast foods to come out and do a litter pick with us. And between us, we picked up 23 sacks just in a little area. But they are very proud of their brand. The hoops are available if you ask for them, because they came out last year and gave them out. So, are you aware of the Green Heart Champion Facebook group? Because what's interesting is what you do in your parish, what Jackie does in Halstead, what we do in the town centre. We could share best practice and say, well, how do you do this, or is this available? You can ask the question. It's actually run by BBC. It's run by Natalie and Comms. And if I know there's some people that aren't necessarily on the 21st century yet, but it would be useful for those who are, that have the facility, which may help you, because you can put the question in there and it will be BBC staff that answer it, as well as other people in other areas say, oh, we do this, or oh, that's a good idea. And I think we could up our game with messaging, because I was just looking back for an article that I read in France quite some time ago, and interesting what you're saying about cigarette butts. If it's what they call a migo, which is a roll-up, so there's no filter in it, that takes 2 to 5 years to disperse. If it's even an apple core, that takes 6 months. If it's glass, it's 4,000 years. So therefore, there is the recycling side. And what we do is we borrow a shopping trolley, put the pound in, take that away, put all the glass and the cans in that, take it back. So we have a bring bank and an 1,100 litre recycling bin, and all provided by BDC, and we put it all in there, because I do know that the purple sacks used to be recycled, but they don't do it anymore, because we allow, certainly in the town centres, for the ordinary bins to be used for dog waste, and therefore the crews are not going to put their hands in and endanger themselves, so all the sacks go straight into landfill.
Yeah.
But I think messaging is certainly something, but one thing you mentioned was Contact Magazine. That only goes to our own residents. I don't think it's our residents that's necessarily the problem, because it's the A120, it's in Worth Road, and as soon as you go out into Colchester or Chelmsford or Uttlesford, you'll find that our lime green bins are certainly making an impact. Our area is being kept pretty clean, and it's about possibly taking it up to that next level of the Essex Association of Councils, if such a thing exists with the 12 other authorities, that we try and have a uniform, because our bins are certainly making an impact and people can see them, they know, oh yeah, it's there. But it's also about, with fast food, they do have receipts, they do have a code number on them, and I'm getting increasingly frustrated because the receipts are disappearing but the litter's still going out. But certainly I think a harder hitting, is it a national thing that sets the fines and so on? Because I'm looking on where you were saying about Canada and so on, they're up about the $10,000 sign. We're £150 and a discount for early payment. It's like, no, hit them where it hurts. Why are we giving them discounts? I'm guessing it's national policy. And the other thing is with the cameras, I don't know if it's appropriate, Cherry, to mention what the process is that we have to go through before the cameras go up. I guess not, but I'll leave that to your judgment, because it's very, very difficult for us under the legislation that we have to work through to be able to put those out. But interesting, I'm sure Councillor Schmidt will be very interested in the yellow signs and what a difference that made compared with when they disappeared. And no doubt that's also been noted. So thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation.
Sorry, and just to come back to you on that, actually, in terms of fines, if you think, and again, I've talked a lot about a certain age group. There's also, if you like, a certain work group that litter. And if you think that you talk about fines and hit them where it hurts. If you think that your average bricklayer right now gets £260 a day, and it's often work vans that when I'm driving along the A12 are throwing those things out there, vans, that's £150 isn't going to hit them hard enough.
Councillor Mrs Sandham.
Thank you. Yeah, just going back to that, the fines, I think it definitely is causing issues. I asked for some figures on it, and since March there's been 54 reports to Braintree of litter, not just from cars, but just overall. 12 prosecutions have come from them, and there's 12 ongoing investigations, and 30 it hasn't been followed. It hasn't sort of come to anything. And part of the issue is, so there's these PCN fines that can be issued, but it's not cost effective for Braintree to do that because of the amount of time it takes. So if someone throws litter out of their car, you don't need to know who it was. You have got the ability to fine the owner of the car, but because that process is more expensive, the £150 doesn't make it worth it, so Braintree's not using that system. So, yeah, because it does seem quite low, 12 prosecutions since March. So, yeah, I think that's whether we could put pressure on national government to increase the fines, and getting people reporting more.
I was just going to come back on that, Jenny, because lots of people now have dash cams, and you can use your dash cam as evidence, and I think again that's something that authorities could empower people to do.
Yeah, I think encouraging people to do it, and then also, like you say, letting them know when a successful fine has been issued, because it's a bit more. Otherwise, people aren't going to bother if they sort of report it and they never hear anything back. But yeah, promoting it a bit more.
Okay. Any further ones? No. Well, I think some of the questions that I was going to ask have already been asked, but there is one, maybe two further ones. You said that you noticed a benefit after having the big yellow sign there. So do you think, maybe not as big as that actually there should be more permanent signs at certain places?
Yes, is the answer. Yeah. It really did make a huge difference. Now, whether, I've got to be honest, whether that rubbish then got moved further down the road, somewhere else, potentially. But I do think permanent signs, again, going back to Canada, they have big signs on the main highway saying, this is your fine if you litter. And I think we should up the fine, and I think we should make it's that peer pressure. You know, you create that peer pressure at primary school not to litter, and then almost that gets lost. So it's creating that peer pressure amongst us all, really, not to do it.
And it's creating respect, isn't it, in our surroundings from a very young age.
That's it. And also, actually, it's, you know, if you make it an offence in terms of you make it the fine heavier, people take it more seriously.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one more thing. Do you think it would be helpful if parish councils had a list or were able to supply a list of registered waste carriers that residents, perhaps it could go in a parish magazine or, as you say, on a parish notice board, so that residents know where to look for
Absolutely, that would be really helpful. There's a lot of rogue people out there. I know that we've got one particular gentleman who has got a licence in Kelvedon next door to us, and he's always putting, when there's fly tipping come up, he's always posting on Facebook, you know, just make sure who's taking away your waste is registered, you know, and how much it costs him to have that licence. And I think that's really, really important. We need to tell, you know, if you give people the information,
they will use it.
They'll use it.
Yeah.
And then parish, town council, everything, we can publish it in our own way as well.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I've got. Any other members with a final? Councillor Abbott.
I could just make the contribution about Rivenall, just very, very briefly, because there's quite a lot of parallels. You know, it's great work you're doing. And, you know, we heard about other places in Houston and what they do there. And I think part of obviously this exercise collating what everyone does and seeing what the best practice is and how we can share it. So in Rivenhall, we've got 2 parish council employed litter pickers. So they send us a bill each month for the work they've done. And very similar, they will do the areas which are safest to do, where there's pavements or good access. But our bugbear also is the A12. We don't send them out onto the A12. And if you remember, I think it was earlier this year, myself and Councillor Wright raised a huge hoo-ha about. I mean, it's like a linear landfill from Witham to Kelvedon, the amount of rubbish, and a big clear-up was done. And we asked a question, and I don't know where this has got to. Perhaps this is again something we can feedback for. At the time, we were told, I think it was by Councillor Schmidt, that there was going to be a conversation with the other boroughs and districts and city councils along the A12 and national highways as to whether we could have some form of coordinated approach. Because at the moment, I think the only way they can, the public authorities can litter pick is to have traffic management. So that would be very useful to know where that's gone to. We do about 1 a year, possibly 2 a year, regular litter picks in the worst grot spots. They're not as organised as the Fearing ones are, in the sense we don't have WhatsApp groups, and it's more a question of who turns up, takes part on the day, but very similar. Fly tipping is a big issue for us, and it's nearly always in the same places. And what we've done is we've purchased wildlife cameras on the specification of BDC, and we work very closely with BDC, and they move the cameras around to where we want them. As Councillor Hensman said, there's issues there about data protection, and you have to go through hoops to put them up. But there's certain places where we're getting quite good quality evidence. They're normally put up in trees, and you can see them, but I believe the data is transmitted rather than directly recorded, because there was an issue, as you said, people getting at the cameras if they thought they were being caught. But I'm told, but I agree with you, we need more audit on this. We need, well, how many fines are we issuing? What's the success rate? We're not getting that district-wide information. We'll get, you know, someone will occasionally say to us from BDC, well, you know that fly tip at such and such a place, we got them. But we don't get a sort of more general view of which ones didn't we get. My favourite ones are the ones who leave the identification material in the bags. Wonderful. You know, like someone's had a house clearance and they've got envelopes and stuff in there, and you know exactly where it's come from. we also get very good feedback from residents on what we do. Same with the dog waste. What is it about people that they pick up dog waste in a bag and then throw it in a hedge? I mean, what is the purpose of that? But it's almost like the McDonald's. It's become a fashion. And some of our really well-used public rights of way, like the John Ray Walk, it's like decorations all the way along. It's one of the worst things for the volunteers to have to deal with, obviously, because there's health issues around it. I think we do need some comms on that. What possesses people to do it? I don't know, because actually it'd be environmentally better to leave it where it is, or get a stick and put it to one side rather than to put it in plastic and then put it in a hedge. We also have the signs, and I agree with you, they do appear to be quite effective. I wonder, though, if they were everywhere, whether that would lose the effect. So perhaps there's a balancing act there. But yeah, other than that, very similar experiences. But as for me as a councillor, having been a councillor and campaigning on environmental issues since the early 1980s, it's the incessant nature of this. I suppose that's what I was getting at when I mentioned those brands, is that it never seems to stop. And I totally agree, you know, your comparison with Canada, it is a cultural issue in this country, definitely, that's the priority thing. And it's breaking that cycle. So I think it's a combination of both enforcement and, a combination of both encouraging cultural change from a very young age, but also more effective enforcement and audit and what are we doing well. Because frankly, most people do get away with it. And I agree with you, if we can catch more people. I mean, personally, we got pilloried a bit for it a year ago, restorative justice. But of course, restorative justice involving litter is that not only do you fine them, you make them go out and pick up litter. That's what I do.
Well, in Florida, they bring minor offenders out of prison and chain them together and a warder, and you see them clearing from the highways. Great.
I think just quickly, on the back of the Grivenall and Kelvedon, that A12 along there, I think, going back to fines, I think also inconveniencing people. You know, we've often talked about when we do the next or coordinated litter pick, is actually using my vehicle and having signs on that, you know, if you're being held up, it's because someone's littered. You know, if all of a sudden we started to close main roads to say, sorry, you're going to be delayed because we're clearing up your litter, it might it's inconveniencing people enough to make them think cultural change, but it's not. It's making it awkward for people. It's making them think about it, because I don't think just saying it's bad is going to make that cultural change enough, if that makes sense.
Councillor Coulthard.
Could I just ask one more question, because it relates to Brentford District Council, but perhaps we should put the litter pickers in a blue plastic bag and chuck them in a hedge. I mean, the litter throwers. But just the Green Heart scheme, why, which is you know, District Council sponsored or pushed, why were people anxious about something? Because I just read it again, and it seems so mellow and unobjectionable.
Personally, from my point of view, it's mellow. And it was kind of one of the points I made to a couple of people. I was like, well, if you're already collecting it already, and it's like, well, we're basically signing to say that, you know, if you're in an accident because we're in litter picking, then you won't cover us, but you weren't covered before. So I personally don't understand, and effectively, as I am effectively the coordinator for the, you know, we are kind of covered under myself. But it was just to raise, just to make you aware that people aren't prepared sometimes to sign. I personally don't understand why, because if these people have been doing it prior to that, it's no different.
Do you think it's just the idea of government knowing that, I mean, they knowing they're on a local government list or something? I mean, is it that? They think
Probably.
It's sort of Big Brother something.
Big Brother, possibly.
Well, maybe we could enhance it or improve it, or because it seems such a good thing. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more? No? All done. Well, finally, I think that's been a super long question session. So if we've got no more questions, thank you to members. Thank you particularly to Councillor Dobson for agreeing to come this evening, and obviously you've put a lot of work into providing the PowerPoint presentation, and thank you very much for your time this evening coming to talk to us. It's been a
thank
real
you for having
pleasure.
me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I know that we've got a lot of useful information here that we can work on to put into our report. So thank you again. I understand you've come with Councillor Mrs Sandham, so you're obviously going to stay for a little while. I don't think we'll be too much longer, but if you wanted to go out and refresh or whatever, you're more than welcome to. So we'll move on. No, before we move on, that's 2 evidence gathering sessions we've had. If some of you missed the last one, I do encourage you to look at the YouTube of it. Obviously, the minutes cover quite a bit, but it was a very good presentation by the comms team. So we now need to work on what we want to look at further. We've got another meeting on the 9th of November. I believe we've got, hopefully...
yeah, we'll send out an invite to operations. That can come along.
And we are also going to ask for a head teacher's either to come along or perhaps provide some sort of presentation on the education side of litter. Can anybody think of anything else that they want to particularly look at? Councillor Abbott.
Well, I'm wondering if we can't try and get National Highways here about the A12 and the A120.
We have, that is something that Jessica took.
Have you tried already?
No.
I haven't set anything else in this time, but we can make the approach, but whether we will get
Well,
it could be a long, we think a long...
I hit the jackpot recently because we got a lot of issues up on the A12 at Rivenhall End, and new chap came out to meet me, and he was absolutely fantastic.
Oh.
Not only did he come out to meet me and said he'd try and solve all the problems up, he also said he's part of his job title is outreach, and he's willing to come and talk to councils.
Oh, have you got a name and number?
So I'll give you his details. I might be putting him in
Never mind.
a hot
We
spot
can live
there,
with that.
but that's what he said. So
Good. That would be very helpful. Anybody, any further ideas on any other lines of inquiry we may want to pursue?
Just to highlight, Chairman, obviously we've only got a few actual meetings scheduled for
I
the
think
rest of
we've
the
got
year.
1 and maybe 2.
Yes. And towards the end of the year, obviously, we want to be looking at the report, so pulling together the recommendations that will go into the draft report to start with, and then in the new year, having that finalised. So just to bear that in mind, members, when you're considering who else you might want to be inviting to any future meetings. We haven't got so many left in the diary. If we want to schedule in anything extra, we're just a bit short on that time. So just use the time wisely, that's all.
Okay. Right. So, if there's no further suggestions, then we'll now proceed to item 6, urgent business. Members are not aware of any urgent business for this evening's meeting, so I can close the meeting at 8:30. So thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel, and good night.